This week we are looking at the chapter 22 of Adam Hamilton's Making Sense of the Bible, titled God's Violence in the Old Testament. Now this is one of the hardest topics in Scripture. Many of us have read stories where God seems to command violence, destruction, or even the wiping out of an entire peoples, and we've wondered, perhaps quietly, how does this fit with the God revealed in Jesus? Now Hamilton approaches this with honesty and humility. He reminds us the Bible is inspired, but it's also the faithful testimony of people who were shaped by their time, their culture, and their worldview. The ancient world was a violent place. Every nation believed their God commanded them to wage war. So when Israel experienced victory, they often interpreted it as God's direct command or intervention. Hamilton's key points are this. Jesus is the fullest and clearest revelation of God. If something in Scripture seems to contradict the character of God revealed in Jesus, a God who loves enemies, who refuses violence as a means of salvation, who embodies mercy and forgiveness, then Jesus becomes the lens through which we interpret that passage. Now, this doesn't mean that we dismiss the Old Testament. It means that we read it as part of a journey, a progressive revelation that moves from violence towards mercy, from tribalism towards compassion, from retribution towards grace. Even within the Old Testament, we see this movement. The prophets begin to speak of a God who desired justice, not sacrifice, mercy, not destruction, a God who is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love. Hamilton encouraged us not to ignore the troubling passages, but to wrestle with them, just like Jacob wrestled with God. That wrestling is part of a mature, honest faith. So, as you read this week, here are a few questions to reflect on. What stories of violence in the Old Testament have troubled you in the past? How does viewing Scripture through the lens of Jesus change the way you read those passages? Where do you see movement in the Bible from violence towards mercy? And what does it look like to wrestle with Scripture while still holding a high view of it? Hamilton's chapter reminds us that God's character is ultimately revealed in Jesus, the one who heals, forgives, restores, and lays down his life in love. And when we read through the Old Testament through that lens, we begin to see a story that is moving steadily towards the heart of God. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Grace and peace. I'll talk to you next week.